There are nights when the weight in your chest feels like the remnants of a fire that never fully died. It hums beneath the ribs, quiet but alive, glowing in the dark like embers waiting to be understood. If you ever find yourself there, sit down. You don't have to rush to silence it. Just place a hand over your heart and listen. That sound you hear isn't suffering. It's the echo of something asking to be released. Letting go is not about erasing the story of your life. It's about allowing the fire to burn clean. So what remains is warmth, not smoke. We were never meant to carry every fragment of what once was. We were meant to hold them close, just long enough to learn, and then like ashes scattered into the wind, to return them to where they belong. There's a tale of a craftsman who spent his whole life shaping clay with bare hands. He knew that the beauty of a pot didn't come from adding more. It came from removing what was too heavy. One evening, a student asked him, "Master, why do you always throw away the clay you've already refined?" The craftsman smiled, his hands still red from the fire. "Because even refined clay still holds small stones the eyes can't see. If I keep them, the pot will crack right when it meets the flame." Letting go, he said, is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the art of choosing which parts of yourself can withstand the fire of life and which must fall away for you to remain whole. Sometimes the heart is like a string pulled too tight. We hold on to things, people, expectations, past versions of ourselves, until the sound of our own being turns sharp. But a wise musician doesn't tighten the string to breaking point. He loosens it just enough for music to return. Letting go is not silence. It's tuning. It's returning your soul to the key of peace. There was once a girl who learned to repair clocks. Her father had left when she was a child, and in her heart, time had stopped the day he walked away. Years later, as she worked among gears and springs, she realized not every piece was meant to stay. Some cogs were worn out. Some had to be replaced for time to move again. One day she smiled and whispered, "Maybe forgiveness is just changing the gear that no longer fits." From that moment, time began to flow differently for her. Not faster, not slower, but freer. Letting go is not about losing. It's about making room for life to breathe again. It's like opening a window in a house filled with smoke. The air that enters does not erase what burned. It simply allows you to see the sky again. We spend years trying to protect what we call peace, as if it were a candle about to die. We pour oil, endlessly afraid of the flame fading. Yet peace is not the fire itself. It's the clarity that remains after the flame burns steady. Sometimes the true task is not to pour more oil, but to wipe the glass to let light pass through unclouded. Letting go happens in small gestures. In the morning, when you decide not to replay yesterday's argument. At noon, when you choose silence instead of proving a point. At night, when you write down what hurts, fold the paper, and feed it to the flame, not in anger, but in release. Peace doesn't arrive like thunder. It returns like dawn, slow, soft, inevitable. So if you ask, how do I know what to let go of? Listen closely. Ask yourself 3 quiet questions. Does it grow love in me? Does it make my understanding brighter, or my ego louder? Does it keep me present in this breath, or drag me toward ghosts and futures? If it dims your kindness, tightens your chest, or pulls you away from now, let it fall into the fire. Ashes do not disappear. They become soil. And from that soil, new light always grows. Forgiveness is not a doorway you open for others. It is the threshold your own soul must cross if it ever wishes to breathe again. We are taught to believe that forgiving someone means excusing their wrongs. But in truth, Forgiveness is the fire that purifies not by burning away the memory, but by transforming the pain into wisdom. It is the art of turning the coal of suffering into the ember of light. There was once an old potter who dropped a vessel right before placing it in the kiln. The clay cracked into several pieces, and his apprentice begged him to throw it away. But the potter simply smiled. He soaked the fragments in water, mixed them with fresh clay, and reshaped them into a new form, stronger, simpler, more beautiful. When it was ready, he said softly, "Clay doesn't break it, only remembers the shape of its next life." Forgiveness is much like that. It doesn't erase what was done. It reshapes the way we carry it. The person who hurt you may never say sorry. The words you waited for might never arrive. But forgiveness is not a transaction. It's a liberation. I once met a man who had carried resentment for 40 years. His brother had betrayed him over a piece of land, and though both had aged, the wound remained as raw as the day it was cut. One afternoon, while tending his small garden, he paused and looked at the dead leaves he had not cleared for months. "They've covered the soil," he said. "No sunlight reaches the roots anymore." He picked up the rake and began clearing them one handful at a time. When he was done, the earth looked bare but alive. He whispered, "Maybe the soil of my heart needs the same." Forgiveness is exactly that act. It is clearing away what has already died so that something new can grow. You see, hatred is deceptive. It pretends to keep you warm in the cold, like holding onto a burning coal. It glows for a while, and you mistake the heat for safety until your hand begins to blister. To forgive is to finally open your fist and drop the coal. The warmth you feel afterward is not from the fire, but from the healing. Forgiveness is not about justice. It is about freedom. Justice belongs to the world. Freedom belongs to the heart. And sometimes the only justice you can offer to life is to stop allowing the past to own your peace. Imagine your heart as a lantern. Over time, soot from old sorrows gathers on its glass. No matter how brightly the flame burns inside, the light can't reach beyond the haze. Forgiveness is the gentle act of cleaning the glass, not to forget what caused the smoke, but to let your own light shine again. Once in a remote temple surrounded by cedar trees, I watched a monk polish a bronze bell every morning before dawn. He said, "If the bell is not clean, its voice trembles." So it is with us. A heart unpolished by forgiveness trembles every time it's touched. It cannot sing. Forgiving does not mean opening the door to those who still wish to harm you. It simply means removing their shadows from your inner room. It means reclaiming the authority to decide who you are beyond what was done to you. When we refuse to forgive, our mind builds a prison and makes us the guard. Every thought becomes a patrol, every memory a chain. But the moment you whisper, "I release this," the gate begins to open, not outward, but inward, back to yourself. There's a story told of a fisherman who spent the night untangling his net after a storm. It was filled with debris, seaweed shells, and shards of coral. If he pulled too hard, the net would rip. So he untangled it slowly, one knot at a time by lamplight, humming an old prayer. At dawn, the net was whole again, and he cast it back into the water. Forgiveness requires the same patience. It cannot be forced. Each knot of resentment loosens when you're ready to see the truth beneath it, that holding on has only exhausted you, not them. And when the final knot slips free, you'll find something miraculous. Your net, though worn, can still catch the light of morning. So tonight, if your chest still burns from what was done to you, Sit by that inner fire. Do not curse the flame. Watch it. Breathe with it. Every spark that rises is a memory leaving you. Every ember that fades is a weight lifted. Forgiveness is not the end of pain. It is its transformation. It is the alchemy of the heart, the moment when the wound becomes a window. Through that window, light enters, and in that light, you begin to see. The one you needed to forgive most has always been yourself. Nothing lasts, not even the flame that lights the night. It burns, it flickers, and eventually, it surrenders to the wind. Yet the warmth it gave remains in the air, invisible, but real. Impermanence is not a tragedy. It's the rhythm that keeps existence alive. Without it, the universe would become a painting without motion, a song without sound. I remember standing on a mountain ridge one winter dawn. The air was sharp, the world hushed. Below me, clouds floated like pale oceans. The sun had not yet risen, but the horizon was trembling with light. In that fragile, in-between moment, I felt something wordless. How everything that fades is also everything that allows beauty to appear. People fear change because they mistake it for loss. They cling to the embers of yesterday, hoping to keep the glow forever. But the fire that warmed you last night cannot warm you today. It already gave all it had. To keep it is to hold ashes and call them flame. There was a sculptor who spent his life carving figures from marble. One day, when asked how he knew what to carve, he answered, "I don't add anything. I only remove what doesn't belong." Impermanence is like that. Life keeps chiseling away at us, not to destroy, but to reveal the form hidden underneath. In a northern orchard, I once watched a tree in the heart of winter. The last fruits clung to its branches, shrunk dry, almost lifeless. A farmer came and plucked them off, dropping them gently into a basket. "If I leave them," he said, "the new buds won't grow in spring." I stood there thinking how often I've tried to keep what has already given me its sweetness. To let go of what's dying is not betrayal, it's devotion to what's being born. Everything we love passes through the cycle of becoming and ending. The moon waxes and wanes, the tide rises and falls, the breath enters and leaves. Even grief obeys this law. It surges, it breaks, it recedes. And one morning you notice it still comes, but it no longer carries you away. Impermanence is not a thief. It is the patient teacher of gratitude. Because we know the flame will dim, we cherish its light more deeply. Because the dawn will fade, we watch it with reverence. There was a village by the sea where fishermen lit bonfires every night to guide their boats home. One evening, a great storm came and extinguished every light. When dawn broke, they found the shore blackened, but the sand glittered with something new. Tiny crystals of glass, born from the heat of the fire and the force of the wind. Change does that. It breaks, it burns, but it leaves behind unexpected beauty. To live with awareness of impermanence is not to mourn every ending. It is to walk gently, to hold softly, to say thank you more often. When we try to control time, we suffer. We want spring to stay the child, to remain innocent, the love to never alter. But even mountains erode. Even stars eventually dissolve into dust. And yet from that dust, new galaxies ignite. The universe itself is proof that endings are simply transformations in disguise. One monk once told me, "Everything you love is already leaving, and everything you will love is already on its way." That sentence sounded cruel at first, but then it became the most compassionate truth I'd ever heard. It means you can stop fighting the wind. You can open your hands and still have everything, because nothing real is ever lost, only changed. Look at the candle burning beside you. Its body shortens, but its light expands. That is impermanence, the art of giving shape to disappearance. Sometimes I think of pain as a teacher who comes in a language we don't understand. We push it away because it speaks in endings. But if you listen closely, it's always saying the same thing. You are still here. You are still becoming. So when the world feels like it's slipping through your fingers, don't tighten your grip. Cup your hands instead. Let it flow through. Feel its warmth while it lasts. The fire, the wind, the breath, the heartbeat, none of them are yours to keep. They are gifts passing through you, asking only to be witnessed. And one day, when even your own breath grows quiet, the same wind that once carried the smoke of your prayers will carry you too, not away, but home. Most people think love is about holding on, about keeping, protecting, possessing. But true love, the kind that endures beyond words and faces, is not a fire that cages. It is a flame that frees. To love wisely is to understand that you cannot own another soul any more than you can own the wind. You can only stand in its warmth, witness its glow, and bless it when it moves on. Once I met a woman who kept a small candle lit beside her window every night. When I asked why, she said, "It reminds me to love without wanting to trap the light." I light it, and when it burns out, I thank it for the time it stayed. That is compassion in its purest form, to love as the candle loves burning, giving, never claiming. There was a boy who rescued an injured bird one winter. He built it a tiny shelter, fed it crumbs, and sang to it every morning. When the bird's wings healed, it began fluttering toward the open door. The boy's heart tightened. He wanted to keep it to make sure it would never be cold again. But the bird's eyes reflected the sky, and he understood keeping it would mean stealing the sky away. So he carried it outside and opened his hands. The bird flew a small shadow against the bright sun, and though the air was cold, his chest felt warm for the first time. Love, when joined with attachment, becomes a kind of gentle suffering. It wants to protect, but it ends up imprisoning. Love, when joined with wisdom, becomes liberation. It says, "I will walk beside you for as long as our paths align, and when they diverge, I will bow with gratitude, not regret." The Buddha once taught, attachment is the root of suffering. But that teaching was never an attack on love. It was a reminder that love loses its purity when it demands permanence. True compassion loves the way sunlight does. It touches everything, warms everything, and still lets everything be free. I once saw a mother teaching her child to ride a bicycle. The boy wobbled, fell, and scraped his knees. She didn't rush to pick him up. Instead, she smiled and said, "Try again." Her love was not fear, it was trust. In her stillness, there was strength. In her silence, a kind of courage that said, "You can do this without me holding on." That is love in its highest form, not protection from the world, but empowerment to meet it. When love matures, it stops saying, "I need you to make me whole." It begins to whisper, "I am whole enough to love you without chains." It no longer clings. It blesses. It no longer fears distance. It honors it as part of the dance. There was a man who tended a garden filled with wildflowers. His neighbor asked, "Why don't you fence it to keep the petals safe?" He smiled, "Because I want them to know the wind." To love like that is to trust the intelligence of the universe, to believe that if something is meant to return, it will, and if not, it will still bloom somewhere else under the same sky. Compassionate love does not disappear when people leave. It transforms into quiet gratitude. The scent of a flower lingers even when the bloom has fallen. The echo of laughter stays long after the voice has gone. What remains is the essence, the warmth of having loved it all. Many think strength is in the grip, but real strength is in the open hand. The hand that can hold firmly when needed and release gracefully when the time comes. When you love without attachment, you become the hearth rather than the flame. Others may come to warm themselves, but you are not consumed by their presence or absence. You burn steady, patient, aware. There's an old teaching that says, the sun never demands thanks. And yet every dawn it rises again, offering light, expecting nothing. That is the model of unconditional love. The love that gives because giving is its nature. To love compassionately is not to live without longing. It's to let longing soften you rather than harden you. It's to say, even if you go, may you be well. Even if I hurt, may this pain teach me to love more wisely. Love like that does not die. It becomes a quiet ember in the heart, glowing even in darkness. It becomes the warmth that helps you forgive, the tenderness that helps you let go, the courage that helps you begin again. And when that love meets wisdom, it no longer asks to last forever, because it knows it already does in another form. Wisdom is not something you collect. It's what remains after everything false has burned away. It's not the sum of what you've learned, but the clarity that appears when you stop running from the fire of truth. Knowledge fills the mind, but wisdom empties it so that light can enter. Knowledge says, I understand. Wisdom whispers, I see. There's a story of a monk who spent decades copying sacred texts by hand. One day, as he worked, a candle on his desk tipped and set a corner of the parchment aflame. He panicked, trying to blow it out, but the more he waved, the more the fire spread. Finally, he stopped, covered the burning page gently with his sleeve, and waited. When the fire died, he looked at the charred edge and smiled. I've just learned more in this one moment, he said, than in 20 years of copying words. What he meant was simple wisdom isn't in the ink, it's in the seeing. The text can be destroyed, but the truth it points to cannot. Wisdom begins the day you stop asking, why is this happening to me, and start asking, what is this trying to show me? It is the shift from resisting to receiving, from fighting the fire to letting it refine you. Life will send you teachers in disguise, sometimes as pain, sometimes as silence, sometimes as loss. You'll think you are being punished, but in truth, you are being invited. Every hardship says, come closer. There's something here you haven't understood yet. I once met a sailor who had spent his youth chasing storms. He told me, the waves taught me what no calm sea ever could. You don't steer the ocean, you learn its rhythm. That is wisdom, not controlling life, but dancing with it. When love joins hands with wisdom, it stops being blind. It stops demanding permanence. It sees the other not as an object of possession, but as a mirror revealing your own depth. Wisdom doesn't extinguish passion. It refines it, like fire hardens gold. To be wise is to see that every person you meet is carrying their own invisible fire, the fears that burn, the hopes that flicker. Once you know this, you cannot help but be gentle. The wise do not speak loudly. They move like a quiet flame, clear and steady. Their words don't sparkle, but they warm. Their silence is not empty. It's listening. There's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But what most people forget is the second half. When the student is truly ready, the teacher disappears. Because the final lesson of wisdom is self-reliance. You stop seeking guidance outside and begin to trust the light within. Wisdom is born when you realize that certainty is an illusion. The more you cling to knowing, the less you can see. It's like standing too close to a fire. You feel the heat, but miss the light. There was once a philosopher who kept a lamp burning through the night. Every evening he trimmed its wick, cleaned the glass, and whispered, "May I never mistake the lamp for the flame." The lamp is your body, your mind, your beliefs. The flame is awareness itself. Wisdom teaches you to tend the lamp, but to worship the flame. In the stillness of a wise heart, everything becomes simple. You stop needing life to be fair. You just want to see it clearly. You stop trying to win arguments. You start trying to understand. You stop fearing endings. You start recognizing transformations. Wisdom doesn't arrive as lightning. It grows quietly like dawn spreading across the horizon. At first, everything looks gray. Then one by one, the details return: the trees, the birds, the path beneath your feet. That's what happens inside when understanding awakens. The world doesn't change, but you finally see what was always there. In the old sutras, it is said, "A wise man walks through fire and becomes light himself." He no longer fears burning because he knows he was never the wood, only the flame. So the next time life sets a part of you ablaze, your plans, your beliefs, your comfort, don't run. Stand still. Watch. The fire isn't destroying you. It's revealing the gold beneath the ash. There's a kind of peace that doesn't depend on silence or stillness. It lives beneath the noise, beneath the movement, like a candle that keeps burning, even when the wind passes through the room. That peace is mindfulness, the art of being present inside the fire without getting burned. Most of the time, our minds are elsewhere, running ahead toward what might happen, or turning back to what already has. We chase echoes and shadows, mistaking them for reality. Mindfulness calls us back to this single breath, this pulse, this flicker of life happening right now. A Zen master once said, "When you walk, just walk. When you eat, just eat." It sounds simple, yet it's the hardest thing. To be truly here requires courage, the courage to face what arises without judgment or escape. Imagine standing before a bonfire. Flames dance, crackle, twist in unpredictable shapes. The ordinary mind tries to catch them, labeling, comparing, controlling. But presence simply watches. It feels the warmth, hears the sound, smells the smoke, and knows the fire is not dangerous if you stop trying to grasp it. Mindfulness is that being fully with what is. When you drink a cup of tea, can you taste the earth, the rain, the hands that grew and picked the leaves? When you breathe, can you feel the air entering the lungs, as if the universe were exhaling itself into you? When you listen, can you hear not only the sound, but the silence holding it? To live mindfully is to stop running from the present moment, to stop treating it like a waiting room for the future. There's a parable about a monk carrying water up a hill each morning. One day, a stranger asked, "Why don't you use a bucket with a lid so it won't spill?" The monk smiled, "Because every drop that spills reminds me to walk gently." Mindfulness turns even the smallest task into a temple. Washing dishes becomes a prayer. Sweeping the floor becomes meditation. Every movement becomes an opportunity to return to now. The mind, when untended, behaves like a forest. After a storm, branches everywhere, tangled thoughts, broken memories. Mindfulness is the act of clearing the path, one step, one breath, one moment at a time. You don't need a mountain cave to find it. You just need to pay attention to the weight of your body on the chair, to the rhythm of your breath, to the warmth of your hands. Every detail is a doorway. There was once a craftsman who made paper by hand. He would stir the pulp, slowly feeling the texture, the rhythm of his motion. Someone asked, "Doesn't it bore you to repeat the same thing every day?" He replied, "No. Every sheet carries a different sky. That's the power of presence. The ordinary becomes sacred because you finally see it. When mindfulness deepens, time itself begins to soften. Minutes stretch, sounds expand, even light seems slower. You realize the present moment is not a thin line between past and future. It's a vast field wide enough to hold everything. And in that field, nothing is missing. Mindfulness doesn't mean controlling your thoughts. It means watching them without being caught. A thought arises, burns for a moment, and fades just like a spark in the fire. The mind that sees this clearly no longer suffers its own storms. Try this. Place your hand over your heart and feel the rhythm beneath it. That heartbeat is not mechanical. It's a language. Each beat says, "I'm here. I'm alive." That's mindfulness too. The recognition that existence itself is already breathing for you. In the temple of presence, there are no prayers to recite, no words to memorize. Only this: be awake to the smell of smoke, to the sound of your breath, to the light that falls softly on your face, to the life that has been waiting for you to notice it. Every time you return to the present moment, you come home. And when you live this way long enough, something subtle changes. You no longer need to chase peace. It begins to find you like warmth, gathering around a steady flame. Presence does not promise a life without storms. It promises you will no longer be carried away by them. You will stand where you are, eyes open, heart open, watching the dance of fire and wind, and realizing that both belong to the same sky. Compassion is not pity. It is not sorrow disguised as kindness. It is the quiet fire that burns within every awakened heart, a flame that does not consume, but illuminates. To feel compassion is to see yourself in every face, to hear your own trembling in every cry. It is to understand that the pain of another is not separate from your own, that the boundaries we draw between you and me are only lines in ash. There was once a traveler who came upon a small bird lying on the road, its wing broken. He knelt, not knowing what to do, and whispered a prayer he didn't remember learning. "May your pain be light." The bird blinked its chest, rising and falling, and in that single moment, he felt the entire sky breathing with them. That is compassion, the bridge where the separate dissolve and everything becomes one silent heartbeat. Compassion begins when judgment ends. It doesn't ask who deserves kindness. It simply recognizes that suffering itself is reason enough. Many think compassion means carrying the world's sorrows, but true compassion does not break you. It makes you spacious. It is the understanding that you are not here to fix everyone, you are here to love them as they are. And in that love, transformation quietly happens. A teacher once said to his students, "When you see someone in pain, don't rush to rescue them from their lesson. Sit beside them. Let your presence remind them they are not alone in the fire." Compassion is not about taking pain away. It's about holding the space where pain can soften. To live with compassion is to let your heart remain open even when it hurts. It is to keep the flame steady in storms of grief, anger, and fear. It's easy to love the gentle, the grateful, the kind. But true compassion is tested in the presence of those who wound you, betray you, misunderstand you. Can you look at them and still wish them peace? Not because they are right, but because your heart refuses to close. Can you love without needing to agree? forgive without needing apology, and offer warmth without expectation. That is the courage of compassion. The Buddha once told a story of a man struck by an arrow. Instead of asking, "Who shot me, why me?" the man should first remove the arrow. Compassion works the same way. It does not analyze suffering, it moves to soothe it. In this burning world, compassion is water and fire at once, gentle enough to heal, strong enough to ignite hope. It is not sentimental, it is fierce. The kind of gentleness that walks into suffering and says, "Even here, love is possible." Once I met an old midwife in a remote village. She had delivered hundreds of children, yet she said she never stopped crying at the first sound of their wail. That cry, she said, is life announcing itself again. It is pain and joy at once. Compassion hears that cry everywhere in birth, in loss, in laughter, in silence, and responds not with answers, but with presence. To cultivate compassion is to train the eyes to see through illusion, the illusion of separation, of worthiness, of right and wrong. When you look deeply, you realize everyone is doing the best they can with the light they have. When your own heart has known darkness, you stop judging other people's shadows. You understand that anger is often just grief wearing armor, that cruelty is confusion begging for warmth. Compassion doesn't mean letting harm continue. It means meeting harm with awareness, not hatred. It means knowing that even those who cause pain are lost in their own fire, and sometimes the only water that can reach them is your calm. A compassionate heart does not shout. It listens. It does not push. It invites. It does not shine to impress. It shines to guide. There's an image often used in Zen, a single candle lighting another. The first candle loses nothing. The room grows brighter. So it is with compassion. Every act of kindness you give multiplies the light in this world. You might think small gestures don't matter, a smile, a touch, a few kind words. But light doesn't ask to be large to be seen. One spark can start 1,000 dawns. In a world obsessed with speed, compassion walks slowly. It kneels beside those who have fallen and says, "Take your time." It sits with silence. It breathes with the broken. It keeps the lamp burning even when no one's watching. That is the quiet revolution of compassion. It changes the world without noise. And when you live this way long enough, you discover something astonishing. Every time you help another rise from the ashes, your own wings begin to heal. When all the fires have burned through you, desire, anger, loss, love, what remains is not ruin, but radiance. The ash that once clung to your heart becomes soil for something vast and quiet, freedom. Liberation does not arrive like a storm tearing open the sky. It comes as dawn does, softly, inevitably, after a long night of surrender. It is the point when you realize there's nothing left to fight, no one left to blame, nothing left to prove. You have faced the fire and found yourself still standing, made of something indestructible. Many believe liberation means escaping the world, transcending its chaos. But freedom is not somewhere else. It's not in distant temples or sacred mountains. It is here, in the breath you take without fear, in the step you walk without clinging. Freedom is not departure. It is arrival. There was once a blacksmith who forged swords for warriors. His hands were scarred, his lungs filled with smoke. One day, after decades of work, he melted down his last blade and shaped it into a bell. When asked why, he said, "Because I finally understand the purpose of fire is not to arm the world, but to awaken it." That is liberation, when the same flame that once forged your pain now rings like truth. Freedom doesn't mean you no longer feel. It means you no longer drown. The waves still rise, but you've learned to float. The same world that once chained you becomes the same world that sustains you, because now you see everything as part of the same current. Liberation is the quiet end of the question, why me, and the humble beginning of thank you. It is gratitude that has burned through resistance. It is peace that no longer needs protection. It is love without an opposite. There was an old monk who swept the temple courtyard every morning before sunrise. A visitor once asked, "Why sweep so early when no one will see?" The monk smiled, because the dust is not outside, it gathers within. Freedom is like that, a daily sweeping of the mind, clearing away what settles overnight. Fear, pride, the need to be right, the ache to be seen. When you live in this clarity, life becomes light. Even the smallest gestures carry infinite grace. You no longer measure days by success or failure, gain or loss. You measure them by how gently you touch the world, how honestly you listened, how freely you let each moment pass. Liberation is not an achievement. It's a disappearance. The disappearance of the one who was always striving. The I that struggled to become enlightened dissolves into the vastness that has always been awake. You begin to see that nothing was ever missing. The pain, the joy, the uncertainty, all of it was part of the great fire shaping you into something transparent. And through that transparency, light moves without obstruction. The wise do not boast of being free. They move through life like wind through open windows, touching, cooling, passing. They speak softly, smile often, and vanish easily. They no longer chase purpose. They are purpose expressed in every breath. In the final stage of the journey, even the flame bows to its own ashes. The fire realizes it never destroyed anything real. It only burned what could not last. And what's left behind is not emptiness, but essence. Freedom is not the end of the story. It's the realization that there was never a story at all, only the unfolding of one eternal presence, wearing countless faces, lighting countless hearts. You begin to laugh easily, not because life is perfect, but because you see how perfectly it moves, even when it breaks. You begin to cry softly, not from despair, but from reverence, because now you know every ending is an opening, every loss, a return, every ash, a seed of light. There is a stillness that appears after all the fires are done. It's not the silence of absence, it's the silence of truth, the kind that hums beneath everything that says, you were never apart from the flame. You were never separate from the sky. You have always been this light. When you realize this, you stop trying to shine. You simply are. And maybe at the end of it all, liberation is nothing more than this: to sit beneath the same vast sky that once witnessed your storms, to breathe the same air that once carried your cries, and to feel in the hollow of your chest a peace so deep it hums like a memory of something eternal. You look around and see that the world has not changed, but you have. You walk among ashes and everything glows. You touch the air and it feels like forgiveness. You close your eyes and it feels like home. Somewhere, another soul is still walking through their own storm, clutching the same questions you once held. And when they fall to their knees, when the world feels unbearable, may they find your footsteps glowing faintly in the ash. Because every heart that has walked through fire becomes a lantern for someone still lost in the dark. And that too is liberation, not yours alone, but everyone's.